And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and it's spoiler season once again. We have Streets of New Capenna coming out here day by day, and as per usual, I like to talk about the commanders as they come out because it is always going to be the most impactful part of the commander format. I got 4 to talk about today, so let's start off with Jaxis, the Troublemaker. 3 in a red human warrior, 2/3. Pay red and tap, discard a card. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. I already love it. That's fantastic. It gains haste, and whenever this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. And it has this new ability, Blitz. 1 in a red. If you cast a spell for its Blitz cost, it gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So, obviously, your commander is, I guess, sort of giving your creatures Blitz, right? And because you are sacrificing them at the beginning of the next end step, they're going to be dying, which means you're going to be drawing a card. So you don't even have to find a way to sacrifice them or anything like that. They almost made that a little too easy. Maybe they should have made it exile at being the next end step so that you had to find a way to sacrifice it. I don't know. I guess it's all right. The Blitz ability is interesting. Obviously, you can use it on your commander from the command zone, right? There's no reason you can't do that. So you can Blitz Jaxis from the command zone, comes into play. It has haste, so you can use its ability right away, but then it's going to die. So obviously, we're going to want a Sundial of the Infinites in this one, right? So that you can both use it for your commander. You know, it's kind of nice that your commander's ability fits the Blitz ability so that you can build around that whole scenario, get your commander out a lot quicker. So I guess you would need 3 mana, right? Turn 2 wouldn't do you much good with the blitzing. You would need 3 mana open, blitz your commander, and then you could use that ability right away. You do have to discard a card. I literally just made a mono red discard deck, though. There's tons of support in mono red now for discard. So lots you can do there, I think. And obviously, creating a token that's a copy of another creature you control, there's tons that you can do there as well. Lots of great ETB creatures. I mean, imagine a Dockside Extortionist or something, right? That'd be a fantastic card in this deck. Rionia, I guess, probably would be a similar build to a Rionia deck, except you have the discard as well. Definitely a very interesting commander, no question. Next up, we got Zayatora, the Incinerator. 3 black, red, and a green demon dragon. And that is not the first demon dragon. There is another one. The name is escaping me off the top of my head. It's a Rakdos commander, actually. 6/6 flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. Seems very suiting for Jund already. When you do, Zayatora, the Incinerator, deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. Wow. Very nice. There's obviously a lot you can do. I mean, you're in a sacrifice theme in Jund, which is always very suiting. I always like the at the beginning of end step triggers because you play your commander. 6 is a lot, so you got to wait a little while before you can get it out. But then right away you can start going to town. You sacrifice a creature. You shoot one of your opponent's creatures. Sorry, any target. So you shoot any target. Shoot your opponents in the face if you want to, equal to that creature's power, and then you get 3 treasure tokens on top of that. That's great value. Really, really great value. And then, of course, if you have a bunch of creatures that, you know, like a Sad Robot or something, a Solemn Simulacrum, that you want to be sacrificing anyway to give yourself value, you're getting even more value. So it's value on top of value. Definitely a very easy build around here for sure. I mean, you got the treasure tokens, you're throwing around damage, you're sacrificing creatures. There's a lot to work with here. And in Jund colors, I think it's very suiting. Next up, Falco Sparra, Pact Weaver. 1 green, a white, and a blue bird demon. They got a lot of demons in this set for sure. I think that's definitely got to be the first bird demon we've ever seen, right? 3/3 flying and trample. I always find it interesting when they have a creature that's not very big that has trample, but maybe there's a reason why. Falco Sparra, Pact Weaver enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. You may look at the top card of your library at any... Okay, so already, now you're in a deck where if I read nothing else about this card, if you just had a commander that said, you may look at the top card of your library at any time, that's a deck, right? You can build around that very easily. There's lots of cards that want to be playing off the top of your library and whatnot. So already I got tons of ideas for this guy. And in Bant colors too, that's a great fit for Bant colors. Also though, I mean, we want to find out what the shield counters are doing, right? You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying its other costs. Well, I wasn't expecting that. In other words, if you just have your commander in play, you will be able to cast something off the top of your library just the one time, right? Because as soon as you remove the counter, it's gone. Remove a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying. Man, I actually had an idea for a commander similar to this, where it cares about removing counters from stuff. So that's pretty interesting. There is definitely, and again, I'm thinking of some cards right off the top of my head that want to be having counters removed that would fit nicely in here. So again, you're doing a couple different things, which is really neat. You can do like +1/+1 counter. You can do any kind of creatures that have counters on them already, but I don't see that as a big advantage to be removing counters. I mean, you can do it. It's also nice, like when I did my Felisa deck, I did a whole bunch of research on really interesting creatures like Acacian Money Changer, for example, that is just going to sit there and collect counters for you. You just play it turn one, and then it's going to be putting, I think it's money counters on itself. Cards like that are great in situations like this because it's just a creature that's going to be sitting around that you don't really care about the counters, just like you don't care about the counters on this guy, and you're just using them for something else. But also, there's creatures out there that want to be having counters removed from them so that they, improve. For Arixmethys, for an example, right? Arixmethys is a creature. Obviously it's a land until you remove those counters. And then, so that's, I think Arixmethys would be an auto include in this deck for sure. Again, so much you can do there because you're playing off the top of your library. That really this is going to be a popular one, I would imagine. I would think so. A Bant colors too really suits that strategy. It suits both the counters and playing off the top of your library. I think Bant colors suits both of those strategies really, really well. So this is going to be a popular one for sure. And finally today, we have a new Urabrask. That's right. I guess they're just chucking these Praetors, these original Praetors, into random sets now, right? We just had Jin-Kataxis in the last one. Now we got Urabrask, who is often forgot about because in the original cycle, he was by far, I think, probably the least, well, I mean, it's not even close. He was the least powerful one for sure. If you see an Urabrask, the original Urabrask in the command zone, nobody's going to care, right? If you see any of the other ones in the command zone, you're going to be sweating. But we got a new one. Urabrask, Heretic, Praetor, 3 red, Phyrexian Praetor, 4/4 with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Okay, we're doing impulse here. I'm almost a little disappointed because there's just been so much of that lately already. You may play it this turn. Okay. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. Oh boy. Okay, that gets a lot more interesting now. I talked about Elkin Lair in my World Enchantments video. I talked about it in a 10 cards video too, which is very similar to what's happening here, right? Where you are you're building around that strategy of the impulse draw, so it works fine for you. But for your opponents, you're putting them in a bit of a bind, right? So at the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library and play it this turn. This is just an extra draw for you, right? If it's a land, you can play it. That's great. It's just extra value. You still get to draw your normal card for turn, right? On your opponent's upkeeps, though, is where this gets really interesting because at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card, which is on their draw step, probably, right? Likely, So this is going to trigger on your opponent's upkeeps. And then, of course, right after their upkeep is their draw. Instead of drawing that card like they normally would, because this is a replacement effect, they won't be drawing and they will exile the top card of their library. And they may play it this turn. And that puts them in a bit of a bind, right? Because they have to play that card this turn. And if they can't, again, against like a counterspell heavy deck, that works so well. Just like I said with Elkin Lair, where your opponent exiles a counterspell off the top of their library, well, they're not going to play it, right? Or if it's a board wipe, now they have to cast it on their, they have to cast it right away. They can't save it for later or a removal spell. It really puts your opponents in a bind. Now, of course, this is the next time they would draw a card this turn. So as soon as they draw the card on their end step, this ends. It's sort of like an Esper Sentinel where as soon as you cast the first non-creature spell, then you're good for the rest of the turn. So if they, if they're have a heuristic study in play and they're drawing cards on your opponent's turns, that's not going to mean anything. This is really only going to affect their actual draw on their draw step every turn and not really anything else. In fact, even if there's a Howling Mine out, the first card they draw will get exiled instead, and then the next card they'll draw normally. So it's only going to replace the first draw on each of their turns, which of course will be on the draw step. Very interesting. This is a really interesting one. I was kind of a little bummed out, honestly. When I first saw at the beginning of your upkeep, exile a card and you can play it, I'm like, okay, here we go again. They've been doing this a lot lately. Everyone's just loving the impulse draw. The popularity of Prosper definitely helps with that. But that second part is super interesting. The problem with these Praetors, though, the problem with these Praetors is they have the one ability that helps you and then the other ability that hates on all your opponents. And it just gets really tough, just like the new Jin Cataxius, right? Who's going to want to play against that, right? And this one isn't too bad. I don't know. It depends. It's hard to gauge the reception here with this one, whether or not, like, if I have this, because I honestly, man, I definitely would build around this commander. It just depends. How much hate are you going to get? How much hate are you going to get for having an Urabrask in the command zone and people going, oh, I don't want this guy to lock me out of the game? You can't really lock someone out of the game. If someone doesn't have any draw, though, if someone is in a deck that doesn't draw very well or a color that doesn't draw very well and their only drawing they're getting is on their normal draw step, this could be really bad for them. So I guess that would be the one downside to this commander, is that it sort of hates on players that are going to be not drawing well, whereas the deck that draws like crazy, the deck that has the heuristic study, or the deck, the Corval deck isn't going to care about this at all. The Corval deck is going to be like, whatever, I'm going to draw like 15 cards on my turn anyway, so I don't give a crap, right? So that's sort of the downside there, but it's still a very interesting commander. I really like the way they did that there. And of course, sticking with the whole Praetor thing where you have the one ability that sort of benefits you and then the one that sort of hurts your opponents, right? So 4 very interesting new commanders already, and there's going to be a lot more to talk about, obviously. Like I said, I will keep going forward with all of the legendary creatures as they come out, get some ideas spinning in the old head about how we can brew some of these commanders. And first reactions, that's basically what I'm doing here. A lot of interesting commanders already in this set, and so I'm excited to see what more there is to come. But that is it for today. Thanks for tuning in.